Hello, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited about our conversation today.
I'm totally pumped. Let's do it.
We're going to go a little bit of a different direction than, not totally different than what I normally go on here, but more in depth in terms of what does it actually mean to not only have repressed emotion, but what does it also mean to be with it, to explain it, especially as women. I know that you specialize a lot in helping women postpartum work with and move through some of those. So can you speak to that a little bit? Like what is it that you're really helping people do right now?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's helping women that are in a space that I was 10 years ago.
Mm,
And that's feeling really, really lost in the sea of emotions that really, the fact of the matter is, had always been prior to having kids, but was amplified and elevated once I had had my first. And I remember actually like the day that the postpartum rage and anger really surfaced, I was driving down near our neighborhood. It was like somewhat of like feeding time, nap time, screaming child in the back. All of you parents know what I'm talking about. One hand in the back seat with the passy or some sort of toy or something trying to keep them awake or happy. And I remember this like surge of sensation, a heat like I'd never felt before. And I was like, that's interesting. And then I looked at the like dashboard or whatever of our car, and it was June 25th, which was 6 months to the day after my son was born. And I was like, is this what's beginning? Like, is this what I think it is? And so from there, it really started this journey of being with some really, really elevated parts of myself that I felt like partially weren't me, but also very much felt like me. A very visceral swirl of sensations. I mean, I'll be honest, I in that space had no idea what to do, who to talk to about it. And it wasn't until he was 5 and I'd had my second kid that I really was met with the work that I'm doing now, that really allowed me to like hold, access, turn up, turn down, move through all of that I was present to, which was, I learned, not just about hormones. It was about so much more than that.
Can you explain what you mean by there were parts of me I needed to feel or there were parts of me coming up, but I didn't know they weren't necessarily me, but they're parts of me. Like, what's the difference between what's you and what you're feeling?
Yeah. So, and this can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people, especially in the work that we've been in. So, what I'm going to share is that from my experience on that June 25th, whoa, time is so weird. Was that
I know, right?
2015? My God, that's wild. So it's 10 years ago. I think I said that earlier. Is that myself and other women that enter in this space of whether it's mom rage that comes out because of postpartum depression or anxiety or whatever it is, a lot of those women, if not all of them, share this doesn't feel like me. And there were parts of me that were like, I mean, I know that I'm fiery and I know that I'm, can be brash and like passionate and just out there, but like this feels like a little something extra. Is this me? And so it really was all of me, but I didn't realize that. And I think a lot of women feel like there's a detachment from this is me and an ownership of that because it's scary. This white hot rage, this burning sensation in the body is like, ooh, like if I don't own that, maybe it'll go away. Like if I freeze, like the raccoon, if I freeze, maybe it'll go away. And it's, that we know that that doesn't necessarily happen. Or if we try to do that, there are other consequences to it. Really to differentiate, it was all me, but it wasn't just the hormones and it wasn't just the anger or the anxiety around, is my kid going to cry more? Is he going to get off his schedule? It was so many other limiting beliefs and layered patterns and energy that I had taken on that was now really coming out in my motherhood journey.
Yeah, and we're not, I mean, to your point, there's a lot of that probably that's underneath the surface that we were never learned, we never taught like how to express. And if we did, we see things on TV or in society of that's the crazy person, that's the emotional woman, that's the woman
Yes.
that's like doesn't have it all under control,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of like unpacking that. There's a lot
Mhm.
of like unraveling ourselves from that. But there's a lot of, I think the majority of the complexity that we add on to the already tense situation is I have to figure this out right now. This thing
Mm.
needs to be put in a bow in a box or a shelf or a closet right now. There is no time, no space for this. And I think that honestly escalates some of the intensity of the sensations that we feel because I, as a type A, rigid, overachieving individual, was like, there's a problem. I will solve this. Like, I've got this and I'll do it all on my own. And I don't need to ask any help for it. You know, you see all of the stories and the patterning coming out just in that alone. And so, yeah, it was definitely a journey of beginning to open up a little bitty box that, again, like took 5 years to get to the space where I was actually, learning the things that I needed to and feeling safe enough to move energy and emotion. But it's for everybody, I'd imagine that it's very unsettling at first, very unsettling.
Is I mean, for any person, any woman that is experiencing any kind of rage or anger or unmet emotion underneath that's coming out, but I would assume, and I thank you for speaking to this. Obviously, I'm not a mother, so I don't know this. I can only grasp what it might feel like or the situation that you can't feel that, right? Because you don't have the resources. You're caring for someone else and maybe it's too scary for the family to understand. So can you speak to that as like the layers that come with being a mother and learning how to feel all of that? Maybe some
Yeah.
guilt, maybe whatever is associated with it.
Yeah. And I think that if anything we start with is the fact that there's a lot of things that we as women have been allowed or given permission to feel like, oh, we can be, just like so lackadaisical and we can be, kind of the maiden and we can be sad and we can be very emotional and we can be very connected to our heart. But by God, like anger and frustration, rage even? Like, hell no. Like women weren't that no. You're like you said, you're crazy, you're unhinged, you're too much. And so I think that part of the compounding effect of what happens with things that go on in postpartum seasons of life is that we are met with these parts that we have not given ourselves permission to feel, have not been modeled, but as a whole are very much not encouraged to tap into because what would happen if she got mad? What if she throws that? Oh my gosh, is she unfit to be a mother? Like, is CPS going to come and like take away the kid? There's a lot of like real, true story about being a woman that is able to touch that and harness that and move that energy. And so for me, it was more along the lines of I've got this. Like I've done everything else in my life on my own, so I don't need any help in this. But for a lot of women and a lot of clients have shared, like, I felt like if I let that out, there would be no putting it back in, which we know is not the point to put it back in. But there's a lot of fear of an actual undoing and the consequences or the repercussions of that. And so I want to extend the utmost empathy for women to understand that, like, above all else, things like anger and frustration are not ones that feel readily available to us. And that's what I feel like that there is this mounting shift that's happening as we talk more about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. And even just, I always get this wrong. Is it PPMD or PMMD
PMDD.
or the double D? I should have known it was a double D, not a double M, not a double P.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where even in that, like we are continuing to open up more and share our experiences, but a lot of that is rooted in things that women just aren't supposed to feel, or they're labeled something if they do feel that. And that was a little bit of my experience, but more I was on the hyper independence. I've got this.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, I mean, I think you said a little bit of this, that there's an element of, yeah, if I let it go, if I feel it, if I let it out of the box, I'll be out of control, right? I'll feel out
Yes.
of control, not know what to do with it. And a lot of people listening to this are very type A, very like need this to go a certain way and feel really out of control in their lives. And so they're trying to control everything possible, which means suppressing emotion. So this is
Yeah.
very on par with everyone listening.
Yeah. My version of that, to speak to
Yeah.
that, is more so instead of accessing frustration and anger that feels really edgy. It's at first in my journey, it was accessing vulnerability and softness because I felt that if I opened myself up to the true pain and hurt that was within, all of the unmet needs, that I would fall apart into a puddle. And how can a puddle that has two kids and is, like star student and, star employee, how am I going to pick myself up from this mush? And so I felt like it would be my undoing as well, but in another vein of feeling. So it spans the gamut, but it just is it's which is your kryptonite.
How did you come to realize you needed to open that or to be maybe a little bit in the more vulnerability or softness? Because I can imagine, I mean, I've had plenty of clients be like, well, I don't even know what you mean by that. Like, how did you come to understand that? And what did
Yeah.
you do with it?
Um I was more tired of my own bullshit. I was
Mhm.
more tired of like looking at myself be reactive to my kids and looking at myself being distant and disconnected to my partner. And I was tired of it. I was so overtly tired of it to the point of like kind of disgust that it fueled me into I am less fearful about the undoing now and more fearful about what will happen in 2, 5, 10 years if I don't shift this.
Mm.
And so it was I am someone that doesn't, I mean, I had chronic stomach issues when I was younger, but into adulthood, I didn't necessarily identify with any sort of like chronic pain journey. But I think even those that are on that journey, they get to a point where they're like, I'm so ready for this to be done. And so, whatever it is, like I am releasing fear, whatever that is on the other side, and I'm just surrendering to like, I need something different. And that was very much like my experience.
That is yes, 1000% true. It doesn't matter what you're experiencing. There comes a point in a journey of learning about yourself and going through something really hard that, yeah, you're just like, I can't keep going with it like this, right? Something has to shift. So, okay, cool. I'm open, scary, but like,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
what do
Yeah.
I need to do? Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. 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 So tell us more about then what that anger and rage looked like after learning. Take us through how that looked after learning about or being with like vulnerability and that space.
Yeah. So I think that I already had the anger and frustration down pat. Like I could express that, but it was more of like, can you do that in an embodied way? And can you remove the place of projection and do it from like a very grounded, heart centered space, right? Which is something that we'll get to later on potentially. But for me, the first steps were surrendering to the ability to be soft, to be vulnerable, to be held, to be seen, to be loved, like by others, by myself. And so, really, in the program that I did, which was based around somatic inner child work, it allowed me to drop into my heart, i.e., little Amanda's experience and everything that she has traversed in her life. And I think that the ability to grow in my capacity to feel deeply what was within my heart allowed me to also feel and hold very deeply and solidly that anger and frustration that was also there because it wasn't just like it's not always about the dishwasher. It's not really always about the anger and frustration. It's about the I'm not getting this right. I have to do this all on my own. Like no one's going to be there to help me. No one can do it as good as I can. If I ask for help, I'm a failure. Like it's all of the underneath that really opened me up to say like, wow, like I this really isn't always just about anger and frustration. It's about all the hurt underneath that. And that I think in and of itself allowed some of the charge of the anger and frustration to cycle through and be let go of and other things be planted. But that was really my initial beginnings of that journey of being able to be with my energy, be with my emotions, and be able to learn to like both contain and express in a really like grounded way, both of those things.
Yeah, that makes sense because yeah, anger and frustration are not they're real emotions to be expressed, but at the same time, there's an underneath, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is sometimes like controversial, but anger can be, I guess I'll say can be a secondary emotion, right? So what's really that unmet need underneath emotion, which I think is what you're getting to.
Yeah. And I felt like that early on in the journey, absolutely what you just said, I would actually put money on. Now, when you tend to the underneath, then the anger is fucking anger. The frustration is that, right?
Yes.
And so, but you have to do the underneath to know what's actually there and what's not. And I think for some people, because I had already had a somewhat of a comfortable access to those fiery parts of me, once the underneath was not dealt with or handled, but like held,
Hmm.
that the top part, the anger and frustration, became a superpower. It became a gift because it was accessing my agency, my autonomy, my will, my need, all of those things. Because women would come up to me, even before I was in the coaching space, and they're like, "We don't understand. Like, how do you advocate for yourself so much? How do you speak up? Like, what? It's so cool." That is a byproduct of being able to express anger and frustration, because it's a power center. It's a part of you that can be used for expression of I'm angry and I'm frustrated, or I'm also like righteously needing this thing, or this is what I'm really feeling called to do. Like they are interchangeable, but we have siloed them into anger and frustration and whatever else this is that we want to like hold up as the greatness of like, whether it's focus or passion or whatever it may be. So that very much interplayed in my journey. And I only recently, when I met you, started to see more and more women that had this, ooh, I want to be able to stand firm in my like passion and power and mission and purpose. But like, I can't hold it. Why can't I hold it? And it's what I'm finding with my own clients. And then what I heard some people echo in our spaces was anger and frustration feel a little edgy for me. Feel like that's not available to me. And that's really the power of the higher levels of being able to access that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So for reference, Amanda and I met at a retreat called Unbound of somatic expression, learning how to be with what's there in a very like body based way and playing with the different parts. That's the best little summary I think I can give.
Yeah, beautiful summary. Yeah, you did great.
And I'll totally echo that or resonate with what you said. Like I've been kind of working with anger, especially understanding that repressed anger is a huge part of how our body takes on like chronic illness and pain. And so I've worked with it, but yeah, there are some times where I'm like, I know that's underneath, but there's just such a blanket on it. I don't know what to do with it until it's almost like sometimes it's forceful out, sometimes it's not. It's like very much so there. But
Mhm.
I do think that's a very common experience with women. I think for many
Yeah,
different reasons, it's layered, right? So
yeah.
when you've been recognizing that, how does this shift, or maybe not shift, but like how are you speaking to it more? Or what's happened with that realization or what you've been seeing?
Well, I'll speak to my own journey personally. So
Yeah.
I had this gift. I have this gift of being able to access and drum up fire and like be able to use that for good and evil. And it's something where during my journey, probably in the last year, I was in the middle of a breathwork session and I had this awareness drop in of like, you don't have to use the fire anymore, or you can put down the fire. And what I was finding is that like I was using it as a protector. And so even more I got to notice that like, where was there an invitation almost in this second iteration of my journey, my healing journey, of like, where can you continue to choose softness over frustration and anger? Not that we're bypassing, but
Mhm.
like, where are you amping things up and lighting a match where it's not like just like lean back, like it's okay. And so again, for some people that may feel very esoteric and like I'm not even close to there, and I'm not asking you to be there, but what I'm telling you is that if you are someone that is listening to this and identifies with the fire, you in your journey get to start to shift your relationship to it, right? And be really really in the gifts of it, than in just the like, I have this blowtorch and I'm going to use it, right? Like that's fun to play with, but like at a point it just kind of gets old and you're like, okay, I'll just use that when I need it.
Yeah. I think
So that's been personally what I feel like I've danced with.
yeah, I think a lot of time when we discover something, a healing principle or tool or something that we're trying to cultivate, very natural for humans to swing from one end of the spectrum to the other, right? It's like you
Hmm.
don't feel any anger. Okay, we're gonna feel it all the time and use it all the time and however that looks for you.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
so it's like you're explaining, kind of coming back to this balance of, okay, what does that look like actually for me? How do I want to be in this? And also am I using it all the time because I'm like really attached to it right now?
yes, yeah, yeah. And the other thing that's coming up for me, and this was the experience in more of like our retreat setting, is that I can bring fire to my advocacy for my wants and needs. I can bring it very easily to the coaching space, so I
Mm,
can hold big energy. Like I can do it in all these areas, but what I learned at the retreat is that your physical connection and your intimacy with others, especially your partner, where's the fire there?
Mm,
And it's being able to, again, access and use different parts of yourself as a conduit for that fire to be a part of that experience instead of it just being like, I only use my fire and my anger and my frustration and that passion within for this to say, you didn't load the dishwasher right. Like, no, it gets to be lots of different things. Some women at first, they're just cultivating a fire to be able to share their wants and needs with their partner around helping with the kids and doing the laundry and blah, 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 blah. Whereas then they get to, once that feels solid, maybe use that in the workplace or maybe use it with their family and their mother-in-law, like, or then it gets to go these higher order opportunities like, intimacy or friendships or whatever it may be. That's the other thing is that anger and frustration or that inner fire is what I call it is so dynamic. It's not just in this one, again, silo of I'm pissed and I'm gonna let you know about it.
okay, let's break that down more. I think this is going to be really helpful. So, when we're talking about fire, explain that a little bit more. What are we saying when we're cultivating it and using it in terms of asking for our needs and wants? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, and I think that what's starting to come online for me is that fire is that aliveness, but it feels differently than the aliveness of like gratitude or love or even the aliveness of sadness and grief, right? So the energy of fire is, again, it has sensation to it. Everyone is different. Some people are their extremities, their face, their chest, whatever it is. It typically will have verbiage to it, or it will have some tone, like tonality, like a sound to it. And each person is different in that too. It could be a roar, or it could be like a fuck you, or it could be like, I want this too. It could be anything. And you will, as you start to tap into that, notice what your individual fire sounds like. And again, early on in your journey, it can be from a place of not victimhood, but like of like needs not getting met, wants being there, desires, see me, hear me, all of that. And in the work I do, it's very much about like holding the inner child and their experience of their fire, the tantrum, the like, no one's listening to me, the like, why does anybody care about me? That kind of fire. Um, and the one caveat too, to like drill this down even further is that, especially if you're starting your journey, for a lot of people, my fire was already there. So I didn't necessarily have to watch it. But I've had a lot of clients that this feels so edgy to them that what is helpful is to watch it first. You don't have to feel it, but do you see the like embers within your sternum? And like, what colors are those? And if you had to feel them or you imagine what they would feel like, what do you imagine that they would feel like? And so you're creating this separation that is allowing yourself to view and be exposed to fire without fully like jumping in it. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
and that for a lot of people, their system only has so much capacity at first. And so if that's you where you're like, I don't even know where to start on this, notice if you can just watch the fire. Just watch it. Notice if it feels safe to watch it. Notice if you can amplify what you're watching. And then notice if you can dip your toe into like, ooh, I feel a little bit of that, like little hot marble right here. Just watching it. That's all I wanted to do today is just kind of feel that searing right there. And then that's it and disconnect. So that's what I would say to like drill down more of like fire, aliveness, what that looks like or can feel like in the body. But for everybody, it is like so different.
Yeah. Also, if you're listening to this and you're like, I just don't have fire, everyone does. Everyone does,
Yes. Yes, they
right?
do.
Um, I'll share a little bit to help give a little context too. At our retreat, I didn't had no idea that's what I was going to work with, but I was working with fire.
Yay! Surprise!
Yep. And I was in a collapse response on the first couple days, meaning like my parasympathetic was down, and for me that looked like sickness, fatigue. With a lot of people here, that's what that looks like for them. And I had never made the realization, like I was in my softness, right? I was like, okay, I'm taking care of myself and I'm like, I'm okay. I'm allowing. Actually, I'm not okay, but it's okay not to be okay, right? Like I'm here, I'm soft, I'm allowing. What I learned was actually I needed to meet myself with some of that fire. And I think
Yeah,
that's
that's yes.
really helpful to talk about right now because it's not talked about enough. I mean, I haven't talked about it enough. That
Mhm.
yeah, sure, we need to take care of ourselves, but at the same time, especially when we're in that shutdown response, we need energy. We need some fire. We need something to be
Mhm.
met. So carrying or going off of what you said of how can we even just imagine a little bit of ember within us, because when we're in that shutdown place, like that's really hard to connect with like the
Yeah.
fire, but it's
Yes.
needed. So the
Yeah.
visualization of it, like what does that mean to be with the fire within your body? Bring it somehow into your maybe wherever you're feeling the most sensation, right? And it's not about burning it out. It's not about burning like whatever's in there, like making it go away. It's cultivating
Yeah.
it, right? Like
Yeah.
integrating it. That's what
Yes.
kind of came up
Yes.
for me as you were talking, because yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes we don't know what that means to feel it.
Yeah.
It's
And to
there.
riff off of that,
Yes.
I'm so glad that you're bringing this up. In fact, I was so afraid I was going to forget it that I wrote it down. So, a lot of what I'm going to say women, a lot of what women can struggle with is a lack of being able to cultivate the masculine within their body. And so, for you, I imagine in the first couple days, there was no structure to say, go play in the fire. There was just the softness, right? And so, part of what you get to do, and part of what I just described, though I did not use the word masculine, is to watch and to hold space is to be in the masculine. And you need both. And so until your body feels like it has enough capacity to hold, to watch, until then, it will not feel or be in the feminine of that fire. It just will not. Or if it does and it has no containment, you are going to burn it down. Going to burn the whole damn thing down. And then you're going to have some conversations that you get to have. But that is something too, because my energy is naturally masculine. I think that, or it leans towards that masculine, it's something to where it's easier for me to cultivate that fire because I know that it will stay there, right? Or I know that I have the ability for it to stay there. And for you, in what you just shared, is like when you realize that, when you're like, no, like I can do that. That sitting up, though you didn't access anger and frustration or fire yet, you had access to your personal power and agency to create something,
Mm.
right? So that is something that's also you get to access and is needed. And it's funny that the spaces that will show up, or the spaces that will show up, because I actually just did a post on this, but I had an unprompted THC journey at a bachelorette party at a bar. I thought it was CBD and it was THC. Again, we'll never make that mistake again. But something that I noticed in that journey is that in the beginning stages of me freaking out and having a really hard time surrendering control, surrendering the masculine, the structure, all the things, I got to a point where I was being held by someone. And I was like, I know all these tools and I can't use the tools. Why can't I use the tools? And then all of a sudden there was a little, and I was like, no, I know how to do this. And so I started to use the tools, but it's not until you create that inner fire of empowerment of I've got this, of I'm capable, that you are even able to access or hold anything that's uncomfortable to feel, right? So we're talking about anger and frustration, but it applies to anything. It applies to me even in the, oh, if I feel emotion or if I feel sadness, if I feel vulnerability, I'll fall apart. It's the same thing. It's just creating that masculine container around that one emotion. So
Mm.
even if you're not resonating with anger and frustration, whatever emotion you do feel edgy with, like that is still gets to be there.
Yes. Thank you. Because you're right. We can't, if we don't feel, sometimes we use the word safe, right? Like contained to be able to
Hmm.
feel something. Yeah, we're not going to be able to go there. Or, yeah, it'll completely shut us down or we'll collapse. We'll
Hmm.
burn through it. Right. And
Hmm.
actually, I realized that's what I was doing. I actually have a lot of fire within me, but I've been either going off like fire, 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 and then I totally burn out and collapse, or I
Hmm.
have nothing at all. Or you know, I'm like, I realized that. I was like, well, that's what's been happening. I'm just burning
Hmm.
through it, like running
Yeah.
crazy
Yep.
instead of learning how to be with it and contain and understand what that feels like. So yeah, we need those structures, we need the containers. So actually, can you speak to what that means? Like what that looks like? What's the structure? What's the container? What's the masculine structure?
Yeah. So, I mean, it can be, and again, I hate to be vague because I am such a rigid person that like, give me the answer, but it can be so different. A
Totally.
masculine practice is at least at minimum just sitting and watching something, creating a space for you to feel
Mm-hmm.
or for you to sense and reflect on something. It can also be as easy as you being able to, when you are like burning it down or you're in the midst of that and you've kind of gotten ahead of yourself, being able to sense the need to turn it back down and the need of like bringing in that container. And so it's not like you just walking around with a bucket like, oh, what can I create in this? It's the noticing of like reeling it back,
Mm.
ooh, like too much. And you will start to, I don't know if you feel this, but there's times, especially like during ovulation and during late luteal, that I have this fire that's usually a little bit less contained or tends to get away. And it's the noticing of the jaw pain or the headache that's like, you're letting it run. You're letting it run. Bring it back. Bring it back. And can you cycle it within yourself? Can you move that fire within yourself instead of letting it up and out? So that's another form of like masculine containment, is sensing what's needed in the space
Mm.
and tending to that. It's like when you're doing a fire at a campfire, the fire doesn't know, am I too big? Am I too small? Like you are the
Yeah.
container that's like more air, more water, whatever's needed, you know? And so
Mm.
that's the way of the sensing of the masculine, of like, okay, wait, we're burning a little too hot right now. Too hot, too fast. Let's bring it back. So those are ways
Mm.
that you can kind of access and nurture and use the masculine. And if you have a supportive partner or a supportive space, there are times where other people can hold that for you. Now, that
Mhm.
shouldn't be the norm where you're only relying on others, but it can be outsourced to others, right?
Yeah.
And you can do that for your partner and they can do that for you.
Yeah, totally. A therapist, a coach. I mean, some of the most powerful moments that I have realized that, oh, I can hold this has been in a supportive relationship with a coach or someone in a somatic space, like helping me hold that. And then I can realize, oh, I can do that right on my
Mm-hmm.
own with some of the things that are super scary and we've really pushed down. So yeah, totally. But again, yes, agreed. We also it's important to feel that within ourselves that we can hold that we can do
Yes,
that. And so what I'm
a
hearing is it's
thousand
just
percent.
really more about like keep awareness, right? Like keeping aware of what's going on within you, within your mind, within your body, and how are you able to see whether whatever emotion you're working with, whether it is anger, fire, whether it is vulnerability, excuse me, vulnerability, sadness. It's just continuing, not just, but it is continuing to understand and just listen to your internal awareness, right? So much power can come from that. Is that kind of what I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And for your people that do have and are traversing through their chronic pain journey,
Hmm.
it can be even as much as like you're in a space with a supportive, a coach, a therapist, whatever, and you notice when it's like all done, all done. And being it, that's a form of the masculine, even though you're being held. Or like for me, if it's not late luteal and ovulatory time, when I get really passionate about something and I'm like laser focused, there is a point where I will start to get a headache or start to get something, but that's from an expansive place. The same thing holds true whether you are in a place where I am like really angry at something that's happening or someone, or I'm really using that fire and aliveness for something that I'm creating, because the fire is both, right? And so for those that do have these symptoms of chronic pain that come on, notice the patterns, right? Like notice that, because that is also a cue for you, whether you have, chronic pain or not. Like I'm not one that identifies with that, but when those sensations come on, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a little boundary. There's a little data point there that I get to heed. So I hope that that speaks more to the pain journey too, because some of my clients that have either had chronic headaches, neck pain, shoulder pain, or pelvic pain, they have very much articulated to me, I am now starting to see the rhythms of my day and how my body is trying to tell me things that I now get to notice and to honor.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you for saying that because it is very true, right? They're messengers. And how can we look at those messengers with a sense of curiosity and awareness instead of like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? Like, meeting it with that resistance and frustration, because then you can become aware of what's actually underneath and do the things that we're talking about in meeting
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And one shift that's coming up for me that I hope is really permission giving to people is, if you have some sort of like flare or symptom that comes up and it's in the vein of you expressing yourself from a really aligned, powerful place, or you're in a place of creativity, hell yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? Like yes, there is these repercussions later that you are suboptimal or less desirable. But when it comes from this place of you setting a boundary or being at an edge or creating something that you didn't feel like you could ever create, like how much more permission giving and tapping into your aliveness is that, right? So just giving that, air to breathe, that like, yes, I now have this flare, and like, what was I just doing for myself that is really serving me for my highest and greatest? Like, gets to be both.
Hmm. Yeah, because exactly, there can be both because there's a reason why that's coming on, why some symptom or something is coming on. And
Hmm.
sometimes it can be to push down something that's vulnerable, but actually really helpful for us. Or,
Hmm.
like you said, creativity or speaking up a need, right? Something that's a little scary, but actually really important.
Hmm.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we talk a lot in the work that I do around protectors. So, like, for me, my protectors are not making eye contact when I'm in pattern or when I'm stressed, arms crossed, sideways, like closing down the system, kind of using maybe a little bit of soft talk, but not a ton. And what I tell the mastery students that I help with the certification on is sometimes you're going to use those protectors for your highest and greatest. Like, about a year ago when I was having a really tough conversation with my husband, was my eyes averted and was my arms crossed and was I like tears streaming with a hat on? Yeah. But I was really stepping into something that was
Mm,
one of the most edgy things I'd ever done. So, like, letting it be both, letting your body be in response to what it's trying to do while also giving it a lot of grace for just like letting it be there. You know, it's just like, yeah, it's your body. It's supposed to be
yeah.
doing things.
That's a really great example. Also, something that I noticed myself in the past couple months.
Mhm.
As I'm having some difficult conversations, I'll come away with it and be like, man, I was super shifty. I was looking all over the place, right? Like, man, my body was all awkward. And yeah, but I mean, it's moving through it because I was consciously showing up to that conversation of, oh, this is hard, but also I want to show up in this way and I want to voice my share me,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, they're protectors. Thank you for that, because protectors can look in all sort of ways, whether that's body movement, composition, symptoms, things to help protect us from what we're sharing or opening up with that might be scary.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Is there anything else around, even so far, what we've shared? I kind of want to take a pause that feels important that you want to keep going with. We haven't mentioned.
I think as just like a way of equipping people to learn more about how their anger and frustration may come out. We
Mm,
touched on this at the retreat that we were at, is the 5 personality patterns by Stephen Kessler. And so each pattern has a specific expression of anger. And my anger as someone that runs rigid and aggressive may look very different than someone like you, say, if you tended to run a pattern of like merging or enduring or leaving or whatever. And so I think that a lot of people like to attach on to one form of expression of anger and frustration, and it can look and sound and feel very different. And I think that that's very permission giving in and of itself. And so I think that over and above the book being fantastic and it being less of a typology and more of like a schematic of what you can
mm,
show up as in stress, I really, really love how he highlights how anger and frustration can come out, because for a lot of women, it's very, very different. My anger looks different than my sister-in-law's, my mom's, whoever's, yours. So I think that that is one thing, is like, if you wanted something tangible to maybe look into,
mm.
that may be really supportive as well. And that was really the only thing that was coming up for me, because I we did talk about that a little bit, and I think it's been helpful for some of my clients too, to be like, this is why no one can understand my anger. Yeah, because it's leaving and it's fragmented and it's all over the place and it's disjointed, and it's like, yeah, that's your expression of that. It's nothing to do with anybody else. It's just your expression of it.
Okay, I'm glad you're bringing this up, and I want to ask a little bit more about it because so I lead a women's circle every month here in Boulder,
Mm,
and we were talking about anger came up. I think it was the last one. There was one woman who was like, I mean, I've always thought that anger was bad, right? Because I saw a lot of men in my family expressing it in a dangerous way. So it led us to the conversation of how to express it or what does that look like. So this
hmm.
would be a great idea or a great example to share. What are those different types? Like what are the possibilities that anger could look like to help people understand?
Yeah. And I did a masterclass on this, around, or a roundtable on this, around the 5 shades of mom stress or rage, basically taking it in the form of moms.
Yeah.
So for those that run the rigid pattern, a lot of times, and again, what I want to differentiate in this is that this is a pattern. So it is when you are not embodied, not present,
Mm,
you are in a stress response. This is not like hey, this is the way that you express anger. Cool. Like it can be my grounded anger and frustration is very much not always the way that I'm about to share these things. So just little caveat to that. But those that run the rigid pattern, there are five: rigid, aggressive, enduring, leaving, and merging. Merging has a little bit of a subset called merging compensated, but I'll talk about that. So anger for someone that runs the rigid pattern is very like you're in a courtroom. Like you said that you were going to do this at 2:22. It's 2:22. You didn't do it, and in fact, when you did do it, you put it in this trash can instead of this trash can, and I just like literally don't understand because I've told you 12 times in the last 2 weeks this specific thing. In fact, I've texted to you, I've called you about it, and it's very like courtroom, very like pointed energy, and so that's what that anger can sound like. Aggressive is probably what you can imagine. It is a fireball that will like rain down on everyone. It wants to eviscerate you. It wants to, yeah, just char you into bits. It can be very directive, very visceral in the anger. Um, Enduring is because the energy is usually pressed down. It takes a really long time for someone that runs an enduring pattern to really blow up. But when it does, it's not necessarily the aggressive, like out and eviscerating. It's just like up and it's very big and it feels very heavy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be directed at you. So, like, my husband runs the enduring pattern, and when he's angry, I mean, it is like a volcano, and you just like don't know what's going to happen. But again, it's not typically oriented at someone.
Mm.
And then leaving, again, I've kind of already alluded to that. So
Mhm.
leaving is very much like the energy is up and out. So it's all over the place. You're getting mad around the dog not being let out, but also global warming and the fact that
Mm.
like you bit your tongue at this thing, and then you also said this, but then this girl looked at you wrong, and it's just so much. It's all like I'm mad about all of it. It's all over the place. I often look at people that are leaving pattern, and I'm like, so how can I help you with this? What are you
Mm.
actually angry about? It's a lot of like getting down to the thing. And then is the last one merging? I think I've done all of them except for merging.
I think so.
Merging is very directed at the heart. Those individuals want to connect with you. They want to come back into love. So it's very much about like, I don't understand why you would ever do that to me. Like I just, all I want to do is help. Like, is it really like that hard to just like want to communicate or want to like hold your hand or ask for help? Or that's like the merging anger frustration. So it's a little bit softer, but it's directed at somebody like trying to bring you back in. Like, why is it like this? Please don't be like this. And then merging comp is more of like a I do things for you kind of savior white knight
Mm.
complex. So that very much is like, well, I don't understand why anybody ever does anything else for themselves because I'm just doing it all for them. Like, I mean, it's literally don't understand why I do all these things because it's not like anybody does anything in return for me. I mean, it's literally like me just doing it all and like forget anybody else that cares about what's going on with me. It's very that kind of righteousness,
Mhm.
ego driven. So those are the ways that they sound, and you may resonate with one or a couple of those, but like that is very much it's a different energy, and your
Mhm.
partner also may not know what to do with that type of anger expression. So just taking that into account too when trying to be understood or trying to cohabitate, communicate, connect in that.
Yeah. Those are okay, that's really helpful to understand because I think, yeah, people just think anger is this like rage outwardly towards someone else and being an asshole, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it looks many different ways. Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all gets to be there.
Yes, exactly. More awareness, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awareness and acceptance.
All right, Amanda. This has been really, really awesome. And I think that I feel like we could go in so many different directions and have many more conversations.
So
But
good.
that is probably all we're going to do for today. How can people find you and work with you?
I keep it really simple. I'm on Instagram. I do not have a fancy website. You can find all the information that you need there
Amazing.
on Instagram. It's got my link tree, all the things. So my handle is the somatic DPT. D is in David, P is in Paul, T is in Tom. Those are my credentials as a physical therapist. I have my doctorate in physical therapy, but I've shifted a little 45 degrees, maybe 90 degrees into other work in supporting people. So the somatic DPT is where you can find me.
Amazing. And it'll all be linked below. Um, Anything else you want to share as a last?
No, just thank you for putting this out in the world. I
Mhm.
have people both in my life and clients that struggle with chronic pain, and I am often very humbled when I don't feel well or when I'm not at my optimal best. And I always think about either my patients that I've served in the past
Mhm.
through physical therapy or those that do traverse this chronic pain journey, because your capacity is one that I cannot imagine. And so I just want to hats off to everybody that's listening to this or that is going through any sort of chronic pain struggles.
Thanks for saying that. If you heard that, take it in again. It's very, very true. We often discount, never acknowledge actually, the will, the capacity, the power that it
Hmm.
takes to go through and what you have. So take that in again. Yeah. All right. Thank you again. And we will see you soon.
Yeah. Talk to you later.